Hello and welcome back to the Armchair QBs. I'm your host Calum Buchan. Alongside me is Dan Cameron, and Dan, this is the end. We're into the abyss.
And what a poor end it was. It was really, rather disappointing.
Yeah, I think everybody thought this would be a bit more of an epic battle between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, and really it was very much over by halftime.
Yeah, well, potentially just looking at it, it was over before it even began. The two plans from either team's coaching staffs were so against each other that it was bound to be that Tampa Bay were going to win. Looking at it from 2020 vision, the Chiefs just came in and said we're just going to play our normal game, and they just couldn't with the difficulties they had in the offensive line. And we said last week in our preview that we wanted to see what Tampa Bay's defense are going to do against Kansas City Chiefs offense, but that was on the basis that the Chiefs identified where they were weak and they were going to protect themselves in some way, shape or form, and they just didn't do that. And so we get a great game plan from Todd Bowles. We get the Chiefs trying to do the exact same thing they've done all year, and they just can't, and then it's over by halftime. And if you'd said to anybody watching this game that the Kansas City Chiefs would not score a touchdown, I think you would laugh on your face. And I laughed at you saying that there wouldn't be any field goals. Just the idea that they weren't going to score a touchdown is just inconceivable before the game, and the Chiefs have got no one to blame but themselves from the way that they approached it.
It was a very strange approach from the Chiefs. I think when we look back at this and analyse it, on one hand, I think you can look at it's a story of two teams. So on one hand, I think you have to take your hat off to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the way that they were coached, and certainly how their coaches went about their game plan. In this, they used the screen game on offense to really nullify that Chiefs front four, and then the defense, Todd Bowles just put on a masterclass. Now, admittedly, he was helped somewhat by Bieniemy and what Andy Reid were doing, but like you say, Todd Bowles just comes out with this with so much credit.
Yeah, well, and things we've got to understand and about Todd Bowles is that he went against type in this game. Nobody in the NFL blitzes more than Todd Bowles. If you look at the time at the Arizona Cardinals, the time at the Jets, and the time he's been in Tampa Bay, every single one of his teams over those periods have ranked 1 or 2 in blitz rate. And ordinarily this year they've been blitzing about 46% of the time. And they just completely came away from that this game. They said that's what we did in the game in week 12 when we lost to them. We stayed in single high coverage all that game, and we had our asses absolutely handed to us. So from that prior experience, they learned, they adapted, and what you saw them basically, I think, blitz only 8 times throughout the whole game, which is a significant decrease for a Todd Bowles defense, and they played in too high the whole way. And if you listen to any of the professional pundits, anybody, coaches, sports writers, everybody said the way that Tampa Bay were going to defend the Chiefs would be to get pressure with 4 and sit in 2 high looks and bracket Hill and Kelce and take away their threats, and everyone kind of going back to how Belichick would dealt with them in the AFC Championship game 2 years ago. And if all those people and all that noise is coming out, and surely those within the Kansas City coaching rooms must have thought, what, that's an idea. Maybe we should have an answer for that. And they just didn't. They stayed in their, base offense. They got away from their quick game. But the problem was when they were getting away from the quick game, they were only still trying to protect with 5. There was no help from any kind of, inline tight ends, no chips from running backs. They were all in 5-man protections for the majority of the game. And then they had to be in 5-man protections because they were chasing the game because they were down so much. So it was a real surprise that the Chiefs hadn't identified their own weakness like everybody else had done, and then thought, well, this is how Tampa's going to try and deal with us, because they can get pressure with 4 and take away our 2 main threats, and that'll be it. And it was really, really surprising that there wasn't an additional layer to the Kansas City Chiefs on Super Bowl Sunday.
The one thing I want to touch on with that pressure from 4 that Bowles was generating, just some of the ways that he was going about creating that pressure, I thought were really, really inventive. He was using his overload to, I think on one breakdown to the right tackle, they basically wind up in an overload formation, then just looped around and in. So they were using some really creative games to get that pressure. But it was a clear plan as well of Mahomes is dangerous when he drifts and goes back to his right, so we need to make him drift and go to his left. And it was very well designed.
So, I mean, when I went back and rewatched it, I only watched the first 3 quarters because by that point the scoring finished and the game was over, and that was really when all the damage had been done. And what I was looking at was a lot of the kind of what you're calling the games, the stunts, were basically the interior tackles or your interior defenders, whoever they were, because it wasn't Vita Vea, he was being lined up as an edge rusher outside to collapse the pocket completely. As part of the game plan was basically to collapse that pocket to make him roll outside, and then for that anticipation of him rolling out to already be there, and they would have a looping defender either be from the interior tackle or from all the way of the opposite side, all the way around to corral Mahomes into the kind of the trap that they'd laid out there. So it wasn't really any interior pressure. That's what they were doing. They weren't doing this. It was all really essentially getting those ends or those Vita Vea or Shaq Barrett to penetrate that B gap or force the tackles in to collapse the pocket, make Mahomes go outside. And then there would be a player waiting for him, and again they would lock up in man coverage down the field, and it make it very, very difficult for Mahomes. So I think there's a well kind of known stat that's floating about Twitter and everyone that you basically ran about 500 yards of it's kind of scramble yardage or dropping back to pass. He had 500 yards and Brady had like 37. But then again, you wouldn't be really too surprised to hear that. The fact is that you're surprised that he wasn't able to complete any of the passes after he was scrambled outside the pocket, because I mean that's part of Mahomes' game, is that even when he gets out of the pocket he's still so dangerous when the play breaks down and they've run scramble drill. So it's just really surprising that he was let down on a number of levels, coaching, and then players with drops didn't help, and tips and interceptions that came off of that just really kind of take his stat line and plunge it into the dirt. But I mean, he didn't play well. But again, I don't think he was put into the position to succeed by the coaching staff. So I don't think anybody could really put it all on Patrick Mahomes this game.
No, I definitely don't think you can. And interestingly, I kind of went back because of the number of drops that I would.
You love drops. You absolutely love drops.
Yeah, I do love drops because I was kind of looking at it and then I was like, that was quite a high number. So I thought, is this maybe like just the moment's got too big for them or whatever's happened? But Mahomes and Brady, interestingly enough, were ranked joint 5th in number of drops this year by their wide receivers. I think they both had 36 drops each from their thrown passes. So I don't know. It's quite weird that we didn't pick up on that through the season, just how many drops they were going on. I guess when you win, that tends to cure all ills, and it's not something that we focus on as much. But it certainly showed up in this game on the Chiefs side. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you can't really fault any of their wide receivers and what they did. But
that's good. That's because they didn't throw to them.
Yeah, that's true. They only threw a couple of times.
Right. But, I mean, to be fair, they threw to Antonio Brown. But I mean, after that, if you had said that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin would combine for 3 catches and under 40 yards, you would have said, well, the Kansas City Chiefs won in a blowout. But Gronkowski rose from the fucking dead.
Yeah, it is. It was a very strange one in that, but going back to the Chiefs' game plan, I wonder if there was maybe an element of hubris about them that we don't need to change anything, despite all the injuries that we have had across the offensive line. We're good enough to we'll line up in this 5-man protection regardless.
Yeah, I think at the very, very worst we call it complacency, because could always say, we are a team, this is our identity, this is what we do, we've practiced it, for 2.5 months in advance of the season, we've practiced it through 17 games, 2 playoff games, this is who we are, we don't have to change anything, we know that we just go out there and as long as we execute, everything will be fine. But, I was too willing to believe that they would identify that, as everyone did, is that, the tackles would be targeted, or at least that, they would struggle in one-on-ones against certain players, and that might be a possibility, and to give them a little bit of help and to maybe change your protection schemes to, take that into account, put Mahomes, legitimately on the move just to get him out of the pocket and, and kind of negate that one-on-one situation. But they just didn't, and I think, I don't know if complacency is as harsh as it could possibly get, but I think I'm willing to say that they were complacent and that they didn't have any answer to being beat one-on-one up front, which was certainly a possibility.
Yeah, and especially when you look back at it, and Remmers was the tackle in the Denver-Carolina Super Bowl where Von Miller just teed off on him, and Shaq Barrett was on that team. He didn't play much in that game, but he knew what was going on there. He knew how to target him, and that's all they did.
Yeah. As I say, it's so clear of 2020 hindsight, but it's not even 2020 hindsight. It's that this was the narrative all the way up to the game. And, I mean, that's what made it such a poor Super Bowl, is that it was quite obvious that this was a possibility as to happen, and yet there was no answer from the Chiefs. And it really kind of, it really soured it for me as well. Because we'd hyped ourselves up for this game to be, a great battle of quarterbacks, great battle of offenses. And it just, absolutely sank,
I think I will say this: if Andy Reid hadn't won the Super Bowl last year, and this was,
don't fire him. Don't fire him.
No, they wouldn't fire him. But Andy Reid had a reputation as somebody that kind of choked in these type of situations or made really bad in-game decisions. Now we saw one of them at the end of the second half, which, with the timeout, which there is no excuse for.
You mean the second quarter?
The second quarter, yeah. We saw that timeout being taken at the end of the second quarter. No excuse for that. Yeah. Really gave Tampa Bay a chance, and especially when you know that in the week previously, in the championship game against Green Bay, you know that if Tampa have a chance to take a deep shot within the last 30 seconds or the last minute, they're going to do it to try and get a score.
Yeah, but I don't think it even has to go as far as, as close to recent history as that. I mean, giving Tom Brady 55 seconds at the end of any half is just dangerous, full stop. And then the way that the refs had been calling the Chiefs' defense on kind of, defensive holding, pass interference, that again too is a possibility. Sometimes, you just have to say, right, this, the first 29 minutes of this game have not gone for us. We just need to get into halftime. We need to regroup. We need to reassess, and we do that with as little damage as possible. And by the way that they managed the last 2 minutes of that game, it gave Brady an opportunity to do it. They get the Tyrann Mathieu PI call on Gronk. And, all of a sudden it's, 21-6 rather than 14-6, which to me in a Super Bowl is a different proposition. And we get to one of the great, at that point, I hadn't thought about it just now, but it's one of my favourite quotes from a certain TV show that I won't name. But anyway, is that someone once asked, what's the most difficult thing to do in sports? And the answer that somebody gave was, well, to hit baseball professionally. But the guy said, no, it's not. It's getting to the Super Bowl and having to change your tactics at halftime because you're losing, because that's what got you there. And that's exactly what happened to the Chiefs. They got to halftime losing, and they had to change their tact, and it just was impossible at that point to do it. So it's really, really, really difficult to try and identify how important that last drive was to just expand the gap between the two teams just before halftime.
I think it was actually more damaging because going on that point that you've just made, right? You have to change your tactics. Tampa Bay were in this cover 2 shell, which predominantly, if you want to get somebody out of that cover 2 look, you need to, as much as PFF will hate me saying this, establish the run so that safety is going to come down and drop into the box to at least play the threat of the run. Kansas City didn't do that. When you come out of halftime and it's 21-6, it's pretty clear that you're not really going to be able to rely on the run as well. You're going to have to rely on the pass to dig yourself out of this hole, and you become much more one-dimensional, all from that one critical timeout mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure, you have to double check on this, but I'm pretty sure that it was Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams, and Le'Veon Bell that were dressed for the game. I don't think McCoy even dressed for the game. And yeah, Darrell Williams only got 2 carries throughout the whole game. Now, I think he got those relatively late, but they were chasing for a lot of the third and fourth quarter. But at the same time, is that even in the first half, when you were running the ball, you were getting some advantage from it. But they didn't seem to have any sort of, you always expect people to come into Super Bowls with just a little bit of something different, a little bit of something strange, because everyone's got the film, everyone's got the tendencies, they've got 2 weeks to prepare, and there was nothing. Whereas you look at the other side of the field, you've got basically Tampa Bay running what is everyone is calling Bruce Arians' system, but let's be honest here. I mean, Tom Brady essentially installed the New England Patriots offense from 2018 and ran that, in the Super Bowl to win. From a team that never pulls guards, you had Tampa Bay pulling guards and running power and running tackles on pulls and running that kind of, special play action that they talked about in the kind of, top 100 players of the 100 years of the NFL that he stole from Peyton Manning back to Gronkowski. I mean, that's why, Gronk had the game that he did, is because they basically took away from the Arians scheme and said, right, we're going to go after what we know and how to win the Super Bowls. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, anyone looking at that Tampa Bay team would not say that was pure Bruce Arians. That was essentially Tom Brady working with Byron Leftwich to get, to get it done in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it was a really good... I think you can say that the turning point was actually week 13. Once they came back from their bye, I think that's when you started to see more of that Patriots blend come into the offense, when they knew that they were going to need to go on this run.
Well, and on a run they did, because they never lost a game after the bye.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there was also, if you look at Arians' approach with Brady as well throughout the season, at the start of the season, he was very quick to call him out for making mistakes. And then it seemed like they must have had a conversation of some kind, because there was all of a sudden a switch, and Arians just had his back, and it was very much like, Tom's a leader, don't worry about it. I'm not going to call him out. And you need that as well, because Tom Brady isn't Jameis Winston. You can't be calling Tom out for his play. Tom Brady knows when he's had a bad game. He doesn't need his coach to call him out for it.
But let's not try and say that this is the same Tampa Bay Buccaneers that Jameis Winston had. I mean, this is a different team, and Tom Brady's influence is part of that. But I mean, personnel wise, I mean, this is a different team.
Yeah, it certainly is. There's other pieces that have been added there. Obviously, Gronk and Fournette and Brown are the key ones, but there's still enough pieces there. They were always close. It was just, I think you can say that having a quarterback that throws 30 interceptions, that is going to hold you back. It's going to make your defense look a lot worse because of your starting field position.
Just a tad.
Yeah. So I think it's just, I think there are some key bits on it, but some of those parts certainly came because Tom Brady's there.
Oh,
I don't think they get them with Jameis Winston, but let's not pretend that this didn't have enough good pieces there already.
Well, no, but then let's kind of just kind of walk through the process of how this team was built. I mean, Tom Brady wasn't the first free agent for the Bucs to sign. I mean, Sue's the major free agent that they got in. But Tom Brady was the domino piece that got others in there. But then let's look at their draft. I mean, they also kind of identified, right, well, if we get the quarterback, then we need to sort the offensive line because that was a problem even when Jameis Winston was there. They drafted a right tackle in the first round. Okay, now we need to sort out the back end because safety play was bad last year. They drafted Anton Winfield in the second round. Then, because obviously Tom Brady, they managed to get Gronk for the third round pick. That's part of the draft. And so there's, 4 pieces that, that they solidified and, managed to build a team around the fact of a free agent acquisition of Tom Brady. So just, I think you look at everyone saying, oh, well, it's easy to win a Super Bowl when you get Tom Brady on your team. Yes, but I think that's because of the trickle-down effect of what he brings. Did he play at a better level than he did this year than last year? Yes. Was the talent level better this year than it was last year that he was working with? Obviously. But there was more going into it than just Tom Brady coming into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that Jameis Winston had and leading them to a Super Bowl. It's an oversimplification.
Yeah, no, I do think you're correct. There was the media narrative of just it was all Tom Brady, but there was you can't oversimplify it. On that, it is quite impressive when you look back at this on Tom Brady's year. This is the second most touchdowns he's thrown in his NFL career.
Yeah, well, I think that's a touch of Bruce Arians kind of, influence of no risk it, no biscuit. And he wants to basically throw the ball and get touchdowns by deep shots. But I mean, that must be the Randy Moss year when he threw 55.
Yeah,
it must just be
55, and then it was this year he threw 40.
Yeah, and the idea that Tom Brady hasn't thrown 40 in New England other than that 1 year 55, that's that really is quite strange as well. It's one of these ones that sneaks under the radar.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. It was just when I went back and looked at it, I was like, this really has been an incredible year for him, and at 43 as well, considering the drop off that we saw, from when he was. Considering the drop off we've seen from other quarterbacks once they've hit their 40s, well, specifically Breeze, it's just. I don't know. It was just something that struck me. Also, his yardage this year, again, it's part of the system that he's playing in, but 4,633 yards. He's put up solid numbers this year.
Yeah. Well, another year to go for him to maybe have that decline that we've been talking about for the last 10 years.
Yes. He's surely about to just fall off a cliff. We can but hope. One other narrative. I text you this because I was, he was the man of the moment. I am shocked when I found out that Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce are the same age.
Yeah, it's not something you initially kind of put together, is it?
Yeah, I know Gronk's probably had a little bit more wear and tear on him because he's more involved as a bit more of a pure tight end than Kelce, but I just found it interesting.
I don't know. I don't know if you mean pure split. Is that kind of all round tight end you mean?
Yeah, more of an all round tight end. I think you would class Kelce and the Antonio Gates, Shannon Sharp, kind of like pass catching tight ends. He's not exactly renowned for his blocking, whereas Gronk is. As much as we think of him as this fun-loving guy, and we do see him making these catches, and he was a vital, safety blanket for Brady during the Patriots years. He is regarded and held in really high esteem in the NFL for his run blocking.
Yeah, which again is just something that we don't really associate because again, most tight end run blocking goes kind of unnoticed, just kind of hides away, and. Again, since Gronk came into the league in 2010, I mean, and he obviously has missed 1 year, so he's had 9 years. I mean, it is still relatively short for an NFL player to have a career so revered as his with so few years, on the clock. But Gronk pretty much changed. Well, obviously, I mean, big players play tight end, but big players never dominated as much as he did from that tight end position. And what the Patriots did with him, splitting him out, isolating him one-on-one outside, that was all, new with what the Patriots are doing. And then again, NFL's a copycat league. We had the exact same thing. You got to remember that whilst they're the same age, I mean, Kelce only came into the league in 2013?
2013. So Gronk came in 2010 and had a year off. So he came in when he was 21. Kelce came in when he was 24.
Yeah. So, and I also don't think that Kelce particularly. I don't think Kelce particularly did anything astonishing when he came into the league. I mean, it was grand, but I mean, it's only now the last 5-6 seasons that he's broke 1,000 yards back to back, which is the record. I think he was pretty subdued for the first couple of years because remember, obviously, he had Alex Smith as his quarterback, and I think he was there for that year where they scored, no touchdowns by wide receivers, so it was pretty kind of limited at the beginning of the Andy Reid era.
So 2013, he only played one game when he was drafted. 2014. He had 862 yards. 2015, 875. Then from 2016 till now, he has had over 1,000 yards every season.
And 2016 was when they really kind of, basically broke everything down and, tore it down and put it all back together again in this new kind of, Chiefs kind of identity of offense. So I think probably the recency bias will make people appreciate Kelce, but the idea that kind of Gronk isn't the best tight end of all time is a little bit silly.
Yeah, it was in that 2010 year when it was Gronk and he who shall not be named, and what the New England Patriots were doing. It was quite incredible.
Yeah, and that was again slightly off topic here, really, the Super Bowl only, and kind of talking about people's long-lasting effects on the NFL and how it changed. But I mean, that was essentially when personnel groupings became, of course, they were always important beforehand, but this was again how you could put two players on the field and still have mismatches because there was no way the defense could put enough correct players on the field to be right at every on each snap. So if you're in that kind of 12 personnel, 22 personnel, whatever the Patriots wanted to run that year, if you committed more big bodies to stop the run, which Hernandez and Gronk would be able to block for that, that'd be fine. But then if it was a pass play, you were in the wrong personnel grouping, and they just absolutely slash you with it. So it was that was a change of when people were starting to see these big bodies and what they could actually do in the NFL.
Yeah, let's go back to the game itself. I think this kind of cements Arians' career now. He was always a well-respected coach, but I think this now just moves him up a level. He was always well-renowned for being the coordinator, but I think he just needed this Super Bowl ring to maybe enhance his chances for the Hall of Fame.
Well, again, I don't really kind of. I'm not kind of dismissing your kind of notion of that or wanting to comment about it. Whether Arians gets in the Hall of Fame, I don't know. It's a matter for somebody else. He's a good coach. He's now a Super Bowl winning coach, and it's very rare that Super Bowl winning coaches don't get some sort of acknowledgement. I'm not really ready for the discussion as to whether or not he will get into the Hall or not. But I think what is certainly coming out this week is the reason that he came back was an opportunity to give others opportunities, such as Byron Leftwich. I mean, we all know about Todd Bowles. We all know about his inclusivity, his diversity of the hiring, and what he's seemingly done this year more than other years is just stepped back and being a CEO and just kind of dealt with the team. And he's not been so heavily focused and involved with game plans. He's been quite happy to leave that to Leftwich and Brady, and that's really what's been coming out the last kind of week about Arians, is that his ability to try and promote others, make others better, and give other people opportunities that the rest of the league aren't necessarily giving those types of person is more important, perhaps, rather than a Hall of Fame discussion, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about what he's done for women in coaching as well. 2 women on his staff, one defensive line assistant and the other strength and conditioning coach. He is like given what the NFL has transpired during this coaching hire sequence, Arians is the type of coach that you really want to have on, like somebody that's progressive and like willing to stand up on the table and actually, put his money where his mouth is.
Yeah, well, I say, we're still living in a world where Byron Leftwich gets mistaken for Todd Bowles.
Yeah, which was embarrassing.
Well, so that sort of situation is still happening. So that's why coaches like Bruce Arians still need to be around the league to give people opportunities.
Yes. Is there anything else that caught your eye about this game?
Just really, again, I don't think I can emphasize how disappointing it was. We hyped ourselves up for this big narrative of a great slugfest between the old man Brady and the new upstart Mahomes, and it just fell so flat on its ass. I was really, really disappointed by it. And by halftime, I was more interested in what I was drinking than I was necessarily watching. That's why I went back and watched it. I kind of really, really, really upset as to how it all played out.
And well, it hurt the NFL as well, this game, because this was one of the lowest rated Super Bowls that they've had in recent times. We say lowest rated, still 91 million people tuned in to watch it, but it was not it wasn't one that could hold the neutrals' interests, so to speak, especially when it was, like we've said, effectively over at half time.
I didn't know that. I hadn't seen any ratings.
Yeah, so the worst viewing rating since 2007, when the Colts played the Chicago Bears.
Sexy Rex wasn't much of a audience puller.
How dare you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. I mean, there's also factors. You could say that people weren't able to have the Super Bowl parties, so the viewers per home was down and all that kind of stuff. But when you get a blowout in the Super Bowl, people will switch off, which
I did.
Yeah. You're supposed to talk about this.
I'm a statistic.
Yeah, and luckily I don't think we counted. But I don't think it'll have any impact on what happens with the cap or any of that kind of stuff. But it doesn't put the NFL in maybe the strongest position when it comes to renewing it.
I think regular season games of the NFL quite happily outstrip baseball and basketball regularly. So I don't think the NFL are worried about too much. They'll just tap it up to kind of 2020 COVID, and let's just move on to 2021.
Yeah, possibly. It's just if you're negotiating with them, you play that in your back pocket.
I'm sure you'll be involved in those discussions, Calum.
I will. And I've been called up by many networks to lend my expertise. Yes. Shall we do some news roundup here?
I have no idea what you're going to say, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we had the end of season awards. Aaron Rodgers, MVP. Okay with that?
Understandable. I don't think anyone can really say that he wasn't. Because it's more. I mean, it is a regular season award, and he was the best quarterback during the regular season. So,
yeah.
Ordinarily, does it go to the quarterback of the best, who plays the best during the regular season?
Offensive Rookie of the Year, Justin Herbert. I have an issue with that one.
Why do you want Justin Jefferson?
Yes.
Again, I understand that we care a little bit, but this is always, such a kind of, dressed up award as to, who looked the best rather than who performed the best. Who impacted their team more than Justin Herbert. I don't think anybody could say that, a quarterback coming in as highly picked as he did and impacting the way that his team played isn't worthy of Offensive Rookie of the Year.
I just think Justin Jefferson had a historic season for a wide receiver, and he should have won it. I also had money on him.
He's a wide receiver.
They have a very difficult job. They have to run and catch. Dan, you know how difficult it is. You've screamed at them often enough.
I know.
AP Defensive Rookie of the Year, Chase Young, that was a slam dunk. And then the Defensive Player of the Year, Aaron Donald. I thought it should have gone to TJ.
And I take it you saw JJ's tweet about why it should have gone to
did.
TJ. Yeah,
I did. It was correct.
Basically, he led in all the stat categories, and again, it's just it's a media darling award. And don't get me wrong, Aaron Donald's very, very good, but I can understand the frustration that TJ Watt would have. I mean, what does he need to do to get it?
I mean, wait, he beats Aaron Donald in stats, and he has to do more than Aaron Donald as well.
In one less game.
Yeah, in one less game. He has to drop back into pass coverage. Aaron Donald doesn't have to do that. There was the argument, Aaron Donald gets double-teamed. There's countless clips of TJ Watt getting double-teamed. It's just a fallacy. Sometimes like these awards are just best narrative, which is, it's just one of those things. I understand their frustration for it. I really did think it should go to TJ Watt.
And I'm with them normally. As I say, I'm a little bit apathetic towards it all, but I can certainly understand where they're coming from. When you lead all the major stat categories and played one less game, it's very, very hard to understand how you don't get it.
So we have some other news that's going on just now. It seems like the NFL has just gone mental, and all the QBs are available for trade.
No. We talked about this. We talked about this a long time. We said that there's going to be a saturation of quarterbacks, and it was going to be interesting to see how it all played out. We said this, but I think it was pre-season. He said that the amount of quarterbacks that were going to be available was going to outstrip the amount of teams that were available, and that was going to basically create its own market. And I said, I think at one point, that we might be looking at a situation where we get quarterbacks traded much like pitchers do on baseball teams, and you basically you stash them all. I mean, look how many, they changed the rules this year because of COVID. Look how many vets that were stashed on practice squads that you would ordinarily, they would never be there in the first place. They would just they would be on the street and then they would get signed to an active roster spot, but they've been stashed away. I think we're going to be looking at teams running with 4 or 5 quarterbacks minimum during camp, and players that would say, well, how are they all going to keep these players? And they're just not going to be able to, but they're going to be able to keep them in camp and choose between them. So I think it's one of these things where we've just eventually got to the point where there's such a saturation of these quarterbacks, a new market's going to emerge, and as you say, things are going to get slightly mental, and those at the top might get overcompensated, much like Matt Stafford did.
Well, I think the one that surprised me is I don't think anything is going to happen with this one. But the Russell Wilson, rumblings, if you want to call them that, he's voiced his displeasure at the Seahawks. Now, I would say it's prohibitive. His contract is prohibitive of the Seahawks moving on from him. But I thought that about Jared Goff.
Yeah, well, it's not that. What it is it's about money. It's about contract. Russell Wilson is represented by a baseball agent, and the baseball agent has one, and he only has one NFL client, and that's Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is now being paid $12 million less than Patrick Mahomes. And all this mouthing off is just as a way to basically get another extension from Seattle. He's now also making the kind of Deshaun Watson, murmurings about how he wants to be involved with, who's being brought in on a player-by-player basis, and all this kind of, power to the players is getting a little bit out of hand. I'm pretty sure that some of the old guard would say, you signed a contract, you will play for that contract, and we're not, renegotiating it every year just because somebody else gets paid more. This is about money. His murmurings are about money. His murmurings about getting hit too much, and he wants to go to a team that will not get hit too much. Pretty sure that a quarter of all of his sacks have been charged to him as being responsible for being that hit because of that style that he plays of running around the pocket. So, every year we're seemingly having a drama between Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. And it was close to him getting traded last year. He got his extension 2 years ago. He was almost getting traded to the Browns last year with the intention that Seattle were going to take Josh Allen. And now another year's moved on, and it's another fucking drama from Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. It's getting pretty tiring, quite frankly. So it's about money to me, and that's what's going to probably come from it.
And obviously the other one, according to Schefter, it was going to be imminent, but I don't think it will be. Wentz and where he goes. I think the Eagles have said they want 2 ones, which
they're not getting.
Yeah, well done, Howie. Start high, and you can come down low. You can make it seem like the other team is actually getting a deal when they come in. GM can kind of sell it like, well, they were wanting 2 ones, and I got them for a first and a third. I don't understand that. You're taking on a bad contract and you want them to give 2 ones as well to take your bad contract and a quarterback who was one of the worst players last year.
Well, according to you, but that's exactly what the Stafford trade was to me. So, with Goff being coming the other way, the problem is that I think they are running out of time to get any sort of value for Wentz, because the longer it goes, the less they're going to get. And that's why this week, right before the Super Bowl, it was all about how they're having conversations with Chicago about, 2 ones and Nick Foles and all this kind of stuff. And now they're saying, actually, we're not getting this type of offers we want where we expect to get value for Wentz. So again, it's just the Philly leak machine taking advantage of Super Bowl hype and trying to get it out there. But I think what's quite clear is that the Panthers are going to make a big move somewhere in the quarterback market. And, as much as Teddy Bridgewater has been signed to a relatively kind of, big contract for the time, they seem quite happy to try and ship that in return for getting some sort of, return back. I just think that Teddy wasn't aggressive for them. And while I think they wanted some stability from Teddy and, his dink and dunk style, I think they were just wanting more kind of, finish and more polish. And so I think the Panthers are going to be someone who makes a move. Now, I don't know if they make a move for Wentz, but I think they're definitely in the market for a new quarterback, and I think that will involve Teddy Bridgewater having to go somewhere else. Because I thought they were relatively happy with the way Bridgewater was, but if you actually look at the comments from Matt Rule towards the end of the season, what he said post-season about the quarterback position, and then the attempt that they made to get Stafford, I actually think they're more in the market than I thought, and I think the Panthers will probably make a move next.
I think they could be a candidate to try and trade up. I think because they're just not I think to trade for a quarterback, you need to be confident that, that's that one piece that you need to get over the hump. And
again, that's such a fallacy. We know that that's just not true.
Yeah, I know.
And that's why I railed against the Rams, thing. And we look at Tampa Bay, and it wasn't just a quarterback; it was the quarterback plus about 7 other players, that they had to bring in to change that team. So, and the idea that the Panthers are any close to just being one quarterback away, again, is not true. So I think they're going to make a move. I don't know what they're going to do. I might disagree with it at the time, but I think the Panthers are the next ones that are going to make the move to go get a quarterback. I just don't know who it is.
I think it's a trade-up. I think they're going to move up in the draft to get one of the guys. I saw in a mock that someone had them taking Trey Lance.
Oh, don't get me started on Trey Lance. The whole. Well, we will come on to that, but there's again. Yeah, well, I think we'll come on to that in our run up to the draft, but we'll have to have a conversation about Trey Lance.
Another one that's come out. I don't know if you've seen this. Orlando Brown wants to be traded to a team that will play him at left tackle.
Yeah, it's a really kind of stupid reason as far as I'm concerned. He's on a very good team. He's a very good right tackle. The problem is that he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps, who played left tackle. And obviously, Ronnie Stanley's there, just signed a massive extension. He's not going to be playing left tackle for the Baltimore Ravens anytime soon. And this isn't about money, apparently, but what comes with being the starting left tackle of an NFL team, most probably a pay rise. So again, it's just about money. The idea that it's just to follow in his dad's footsteps and play left tackle in the NFL, I think is wishy-washy at best. But all power to him. Maybe second, maybe low first. Who knows? Maybe a player exchange. Who knows how the market's going to play out? But I think Orlando Brown has made it clear that he wants to go, and if the Ravens think that they're going to get a value for him, then they will trade him. They've got no difficulty with doing that. So I think that's most probably what's going to come next for some left tackle needy team.
Yeah, and I think there's enough of a market out there that is certainly a market that is not oversaturated.
No, and I could see the Patriots coming and trying to take him off the Ravens' hands for a second round pick. They've had done deals before for offensive linemen from the Ravens, and so it really is more about the compensation rather than anything else. And so the Patriots need to kind of restock that line, and it's an easy connection that's been there before for offensive linemen from one team to another, because the Patriots like what young players on the Ravens get taught, full stop. And there's often kind of interaction between those two franchises on kind of lower level picks. So I would hope for maybe kind of a second and a third. That would probably be value. I'm not going to say a first because again they're not going to give up a first for that. I don't think anyone's going to give up a first for Orlando Brown, but he played well enough at left tackle when Ronnie Stanley went out, so he's shown that the ability is there. I just don't think anyone's willing to pay a first for him. So I'd be quite happy for a couple of second or twos or threes, and he can go be a left tackle wherever he wants.
Okay. Before we finish up, I'm going to put you on the spot and go for Mystic Dan.
Oh God!
Here.
Never goes well. I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Remember?
Well, this is on that. February 6, 2022, in SoFi Stadium, California. COVID is no longer a thing. Who is in the Super Bowl?
Well, it depends. Are the Chiefs going to continue to play like they did in the last game? Because if they did, then the AFC is wide open. Packers, Ravens. There we go.
You know what? I'm kind of leaning with you. I don't think the Chiefs make it back. The history of the losing competitor in the Super Bowl getting back there the previous year is very slim.
Yeah, and I'm just being a homer for the Ravens. I think the Ravens have got a good enough team to, at least get to the playoffs. They won one playoff game this year. Maybe they can turn it into something a bit different. They will obviously need to make changes. But I just think, again, the Packers managed to get almost better without really adding anybody or upgrading anywhere. So I just think that that Packers team is, they confounded my expectations from the beginning of this year, and so I just think that they're going to continue on in that role, and I think that their division is relatively weak, and I think I just think that they win that division easily, and I think they get a relatively kind of good record. They'll get a bye. I just think that's where we are. But again, that's a knee-jerk reaction, and you have put me on the spot.
I was thinking about this today. I definitely think it will be the Packers in the Super Bowl because I think they need to get over that hump now. 2 years in a row they've been to the NFC Championship game, not advanced. I think next year is the year that they finally get over that. The AFC is the one that I struggle with the most, and when it comes down to it, I think it's either going to be the Bills or the Ravens that'll be in the Super Bowl for them.
I think asking now is extremely prophetic, but I think really after free agency, after the draft, that would be the better time. Preseason picks.
I know there's preseason picks, but
there's preseason picks, and then there's preseason picks, and just now is too much.
This is preseason picks.
Preseason. Anyway.
Yeah, we're still in the old league year. I just think that's one of these. That's how my gut is leaning just now.
All right, well,
I was already looking at the odds, but they weren't offering me each way yet.
All right, well, then I'll put you on the spot. Who's got the number one pick in the 2022 draft?
That's not a hard question. It's the Texans.
You think?
Yeah. Who's going to be worse than them?
Oh, I don't know.
They're not going to have a quarterback. Their coach is. I can't even think of the words to describe him. He is a sentient being. That is maybe it all. He certainly adds no value.
Yeah. I know. I just thought kind of Lions maybe. They would give you a shot.
No, I think they won't be good, but they'll play hard. And they'll be one of those teams that play themselves out of the first pick.
Fair enough. All right, Texans it is. Texans, Ravens, and Packers. There we go.
There we go. That's everything sorted. No need to watch next year. We've already told you what's going to happen. We will be back next week. And yeah, I think we'll have something special planned for that. Or I have an idea for something special. Whether or not we deliver on it, who knows? You'll need to tune in next week to find out. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And be sure to check out Gridiron Hub, where you can see some of my many musings, including where I predicted that the Buccaneers would win the Super Bowl. So until next week, goodbye.